Here's a quick conspiracy about Siren Head that you should know about. So Siren Head is obviously a siren, and sirens usually make the sound ee-oo, ee-oo, ee-oo. And the ee-oo sound is actually used in the song The Box by Roddy Ricch. Roddy Ricch samples a slowed down siren noise in his song The Box. That's right, Roddy Ricch is actually Siren Head. And Roddy Ricch is using Siren Head to play his song The Box even louder so more people could stream it. Make sure to spread the news.
This is why you should never go cave exploring. This is John Jones. He was an experienced cave explorer and he had a wife and kids. One day he decided to explore the famous Nutty Putty Cave. He knew the cave very well but ended up taking a wrong turn that would change his life forever. He became stuck upside down and he couldn't move. Over 100 rescuers tried pulling him out with no success. After 27 hours, John took his last breath, accepting the fact that he would never see his family ever again.
This is a creepy story about the text message. A 15-year-old boy lived in a small town in Maryland. After getting home from school one day, he went on his computer. He logged into an instant messenger and was surprised to see a message from a classmate who wasn't in school that day. It said, "Please come." The boy was confused and texted him back asking why he wasn't at school. He sent a couple more messages, and after 15 minutes of no response, he decided to ride his bike over to his classmate's house that was about 5 minutes away. When he got to the house, the door was unlocked and opened slightly. Inside the house, there was blood splattered all over the walls and floor. There were severed arms and legs scattered across the room, and there was blood streaks on the floor from somebody dragging dead bodies. The boy then slammed the door and immediately called the police. When the police arrived, they found 3 dead bodies, as well as bloody footprints leading out the door. The forensic report concluded that the boy's classmate and his parents were brutally murdered the night before.
This is the saddest story you've never heard. This is the Coble family. In 2007, they were involved in a horrific car accident. The parents both survived, but when they woke up in the hospital, doctors told them their 3 kids had died. They were devastated. But miraculously, the mom, Lori, discovered she was pregnant, and 6 months later gave birth to triplets. This is the Coble family today, happy and healthy. This is the story of the doll maker. A young boy was killed by a car and his parents were devastated. His mom couldn't cope with his death and was on the brink of suicide. In desperation, the husband hired a doll maker to make a doll version of their son. When the mother held the doll, she was convinced it was her real son. He gave the husband specific instructions to never go outside of the house with it, or else the illusion of their real son would turn back into a doll. Weeks passed and the mom spent all day and night with the doll, and the husband couldn't stand the sight of it anymore. He forced his wife and the doll outside so she could finally see the truth. But when they got outside, the husband was paralyzed. His wife was a doll too.
This is a scary story about the strange dream. One summer day, a kid named Chris lost his footing and fell off a cliff. He landed on a ledge and it saved his life, but he was badly injured and had to be rescued. He hit his head on the fall and he was unconscious. The doctors found swelling in his brain, and he had to get surgery immediately. After the surgery, he went into a coma. A few days later, he recovered, and his friend went to go visit him in the hospital. Chris then told him about the strange dream he had while he was unconscious. In the dream, he was at a train station. There was nobody else in sight. When the train pulled up to the station, he got in. There was nobody on the train. He was completely alone. Then he heard a crackling voice on the speakers. It said, "Next stop, final stop. Next stop, end of line." Something about the announcement sent a chill down his spine, and he jumped out of his seat and managed to get off the train. Just as the doors were closing, he woke up from his coma. The doctor said he was between life and death. He then said to his friend, "If I hadn't gotten off that train, I believe the end of the line meant I would have died."
A girl gives up her life to save others. This is 10-year-old Kira Larson. She had a playdate in her front yard with 2 toddlers, until a parked car started rolling backwards towards the young kids. Kira acted fast, running into the car's pathway and pushing the kids out of the way, saving their lives. But Kira was hit by the car and later died on the way to the hospital. She will always be remembered as a hero.
This is a scary story about the mirror in the closet. There was a girl who had a bedroom closet. On the inside of the closet door, there was a mirror. The girl loved to freak herself out, and sometimes she would open the closet door at night and just stare at her reflection in the mirror. But one night when she did this, she was surprised to see an interesting effect. Due to the interplay of light and shadow, when she looked in the mirror, It seemed like her reflection had black, empty eyes and a huge gaping mouth. After admiring the optical illusion for a moment, the girl went to the bathroom. But when she turned on the bathroom light, she remembered something that made her lock herself inside the bathroom. Then she started to scream loud enough to wake her parents. She remembered that earlier that day, her father had removed the mirror from her closet door.
You won't believe this kid exists. This is Muhammad Kaleem. When he was born, his family abandoned him, and the kids in his village outcasted him, believing he was the devil. But luckily, there's hope for Muhammad. A local surgeon has dedicated his life to helping him, and won't stop until Muhammad is healthy and happy. You won't believe why this girl got suspended. 9-year-old Cameron Renfro had a friend who had cancer. To support her, Cameron decided to shave her head. But the next day, she was immediately suspended for apparently not following the dress code.
This is a scary story about the bath. Jennifer was sitting at her desk in her room. She was finishing up her homework when she suddenly got a text from a number she did not recognize. The text message said, "Take a bath and go to bed, it's a school night, Mom." Jennifer thought her mom's phone died and she used somebody else's phone to text her. She already planned on taking a bath, so she undressed and grabbed a towel and walked into the bathroom. She stopped in her tracks and was surprised that the bathtub was already filled. "I guess my mom filled it in advance," she said. She then shrugged her shoulders and got in the bathtub. When she was in the bathtub, she became aware of a burning sensation all over her body, and it got worse and worse until she was crying. She then jumped out of the bath, but it was too late. The water was blood red, and the skin on her arms and legs were beginning to peel off. She was dripping blood and skin. She then picked up her phone to call the police, but there was a new text message waiting for her. It said, "Next time, bathe in water." Jennifer then heard laughter behind her, and standing there was a man holding an empty container of sulfuric acid. This is a scary story about the Pale Hands. A group of teenagers went on a trip to the seaside. They found a cliff that overlooked the water, and they all sat down and had a picnic. Afterwards, some of the teenagers decided to jump off the cliff into the water. One girl brought her camera and was taking pictures of her friends as they jumped. One of the boys jumped off the cliff into the sea and made a ginormous splash. His friends clapped and cheered, but when they looked over the cliff, they couldn't see him. The boy never came up from the water, and his devastated friends had to call the police. A team of rescue workers eventually dragged the boy's body out of the sea. He drowned and he was dead. A week later at his funeral, the dead boy's friends were looking through the photos they took that day. But when they came to one picture in particular, they stopped and stared in horror. It was a picture of the drowned boy, taken when he was jumping off the cliff. Coming out of the water in the photo were countless white pale hands, clutching the boy tightly and dragging him into the sea and killing him.
This gives a whole new meaning to raised by wolves. In Russia, hunters found a boy living with a pack of wolves. They brought him to a nearby hospital, where he acted like a wild animal. The boy had razor-sharp teeth, barked like a dog, and even crawled on all fours. But the boy somehow managed to escape the hospital, and he's been missing ever since.
I can confirm that this is a true story. One day, a 3-year-old boy snuck past the barriers at the Brookfield Zoo. By accident, the boy fell in the gorilla enclosure and was extremely hurt. A female gorilla named Binti Joie rushed to the child's rescue and protected him from other gorillas. She then carefully lifted the boy and brought him to the surface door where the medics could get to him. Thanks to the gentle touch of the gorilla, the boy survived with only minor injuries.
This is a scary story about The Voice. There were 3 friends living in South Korea in an apartment building. There was Mia, Mi-san, and Young. One night they went to a nightclub. When they left the nightclub that night, they all decided to get a taxi home. They waved to a taxi that was passing by. It stopped and they got in. Mia sat in the front seat and Mi-san and Young sat in the back. The taxi driver was an old man. He began telling jokes and Mia was laughing, but she noticed Mi-san and Young weren't even laughing at all. They were stone-faced with a weird expression. Mia said, "What's wrong? Why aren't you laughing?" They wouldn't answer her. Instead, they just stared straight ahead. Mia told the taxi driver to pull over, and he did. The 3 girls got out and started to walk away quickly. Mia said to them, "What's wrong?" They turned to her with their faces covered in fear. "We have to call the police," Young said. "Didn't you hear it?" said Mi-san. Coming from the trunk of the taxi, there was a woman's voice saying, "Please help me, please help me." This is a creepy story about which is which. There was a 20-year-old couple who lived together. They loved each other so much. They were always with each other and didn't go anywhere without each other. One Saturday night, they went to the nightclub to celebrate the birthday of a friend. They drank a lot of alcohol and stayed there for hours. They left the nightclub very late, They were very eager to go to bed, so they took a shortcut and drove very fast. The next morning they woke up, and they both felt that something about the relationship changed. Their mutual understanding was different. They no longer spoke or touched each other. They didn't kiss anymore, and they completely ignored each other. That night they found themselves watching TV together. The news came on, and there was a story about a fatal accident that happened the night before. The newsreader said, one of the victims survived and the other one died. When the two victims' faces came up on the screen, the couple was horrified. They were staring at their own faces. The most terrifying thing was that there was still one question that remained unanswered. Which one of them was the ghost? This is a scary story about the woman in the night. A young man moved into an apartment building. The first night he slept in his new apartment, he was woke up by somebody knocking on the door at 1 o'clock in the morning. He got up and opened the door, and standing there was a young woman. She apologized for waking him up and told him that she was his neighbor. She said her husband was beating her and asked if she could spend the night on the sofa. The man felt bad and let her stay the night even though it seemed strange. The next morning, he checked the living room and discovered that the woman was already gone. He assumed that her husband and her made up. But that night, at the same time as before, the same girl was knocking on the door. The man opened it and she said her husband had beaten her up again and wondered if she could spend the night on the sofa again. He said yes, and the next morning when he got up, the woman was gone again. The man grew suspicious and asked his landlord about the strange neighbor. The landlord's face grew pale and said nobody lives in that apartment. He said a woman who lived there died 1 year ago after being beaten to death by her husband.
This girl was born different. This is Adalia. She was born with progeria, which causes the body to age at a rapid rate. Doctors told her mom she wouldn't live long, but Adalia proved them wrong. Today she is thriving. At only 13, she's built up a massive social media following, and her parents support her every step of the way.
This is the creepy story about I'll Wait Here. One night, two friends were walking home together. It was dark and raining hard. All of a sudden there was a loud noise, and they saw a car swerve onto the road. The two friends then got hit by the car and were tossed head over heels into a ditch. The two friends were covered in mud. The driver of the car never even bothered to stop. They helped each other out of the ditch and used the light of their phones to check themselves for injuries. Both of them seemed to not have one injury. They cursed the driver for being so careless, and they continued to walk home. When they got to their houses, the one friend said he was going home to bed, but the other one said, "You go ahead, I'll wait here for a while." The one friend then woke up in a hospital. His body was covered in bandages, and he was in severe pain. He said to the nurse, "Where am I? What happened?" She then said, "You're in the hospital. You just woke up from a 3-day coma. You were hit by a car but survived." "What about my friend?" he said. "I'm sorry," she said, "but he didn't make it." When he got over the shock, he recalled the last words his friend said to him. His friend said, "You go ahead, I'll wait here for a while." This is a scary story about the call. There was a girl named Sophia who was in elementary school. It was the end of lunch break, and she was sitting in her class talking to her friends, when her teacher came over to her with a pale, serious face. She said, "Sophia, I have some bad news. Your mother was in an accident at work. Get your things and go to the principal's office." Sophia was shocked and didn't know what to think. She packed her bag and headed out the door. The principal was waiting for her in his office. He said, "I just got off the phone with your father. He told me your mother was badly injured. He's rushing to the hospital and wants to pick you up on the way. You will wait outside and he will collect you. Now hurry along." "But sir," Sophia said. "No but," said the principal. "Go outside and wait for him." "But sir, I don't have a father," Sophia said. "We're a single-parent family. My dad died when I was a baby." The principal's jaw dropped. After that, her mother came to the school and complained, and she wasn't injured at all. The police were called and nobody was able to walk home. To this day, Sophia still wonders who the mystery man was who called and what he planned to do with her once he managed to get his hands on her.